Well, yeah, thanks so much for doing this with me.
Not a problem.
Can you tell me your name and position?
Ryan Hope, and I am the municipal court judge for Athens Clarke County. I've been doing it for just a little over 2 years at this point.
Okay. So the municipal court, what is it?
Municipal court, there are about 300 over all of the state of Georgia. And in Athens Clarke County, it is a full-time court. In some jurisdictions, it might be a court that would only meet monthly. But the jurisdiction of the municipal court generally throughout the state of Georgia is it adjudicates traffic offenses. That's what it's probably most known for. In most jurisdictions, it would also handle ordinance violations and some minor misdemeanors. So that is the bulk of my caseload. The minor misdemeanors would be shoplifting, misdemeanor marijuana, and then ordinance violations could be anything from animal control issues, building code violations, up to public intoxication, disorderly conduct, those types of offenses. And then the traffic could be anything from a seatbelt up to driving under the influence of alcohol would probably be the most serious offense that you could have in municipal court.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about your background. Did you always want to be a judge?
I hardly even wanted to be an attorney who would be in the courtroom, not to mention a judge. I came to UGA in 1993. For undergrad, I studied political science with a minor in Russian language. And my intent when I started law school was to do possibly international law, State Department, nuclear disarmament, that type of information, or those types of fields were going to be very interesting to me. And I did not like my international law classes at all when I started taking them in law school, even though political science was a huge interest of mine, and especially international relations. I did not like international law classes. And I took a clinic with the Public Defender's Office in law school. So as a student, I got to go out to the jail and interview people who were in custody, find out a little bit about their charges and where we could help them, open up files basically for the attorney to then handle, and then eventually got to the point where I could try cases in the courtroom as a third-year law student. And just the different interest level I had in my international law classes versus that experience, it did a 180 on my job plans. I had no attorneys in my family. I'm the first attorney in my family, and so I didn't really have any preconceived notion of what I would do, but I didn't think I'd be in the courtroom. So it's interesting how that turned out.
Cool. Let's see. So how do you think that our justice system, I guess in this court and other courts generally, how do you think it affects people, and I guess either both positively or negatively, and basically like why do you think people should care about our justice system?
Having been both a public defender and a prosecutor, I would say just as my perception about how the judge needed to behave in a courtroom, the number one thing was to make sure that people who entered the courtroom were treated with respect, whether they were facing that seatbelt violation or something more serious, that everyone needs to be treated with respect when they come into the courtroom. And so I think that's something the public should demand of all the entities that someone interacts with throughout the criminal justice system, is that whether someone did or did not do what they're accused of, no matter how minor it is or how serious it is, that person is treated with respect. The courts, even on something as minor as traffic offenses, can really impact someone's life. The amount of money a speeding fine can cost, what it can do to someone's insurance, whether or not they get to keep their license based on how fast the speed is or how serious their offense is, can impact the individual much more greatly than just the limited experience I'm going to have with them. And so I do think, even for minor matters, but certainly for more serious matters like what you would see in Superior Court, the courts obviously have a huge impact on the lives of the individuals who come before them.
Yeah, definitely. So how about someone who maybe isn't going through the court system like right now? Why should what you do or what other judges do, why should that matter to them?
I mean, there's the public safety aspect. There are certain things I deal with that do have public safety risks, and the percentage of cases that have those risks increase as you go up the level of court. So state court has a lot of domestic violence cases. 80% of the domestic violence offenses in Georgia are misdemeanor offenses. So in state court, that could be a big concern to the public in general. And then when you get to Superior Court, you're dealing with child molestation, you're dealing with aggravated assault, murder. There's that side of it. But just as a community as a whole, as I said, I came to UGA in '93, so I've lived in Athens a long time now, and it's very important for people to be able to expect that whether it's your neighbor, a buddy of yours, or someone you don't know at all, that there's a fair process that they're going to go through in the community, and it just generates respect for the system in general if that is happening on a day-to-day basis, in my opinion.
Do you think most people do expect that, or because a lot of people, they think that there's some real injustice happening, because we have so many people behind bars, more than most other countries. So I guess, do you think our justice system needs reform? And if so, how?
There are certainly areas that are constantly being worked on, and in some jurisdictions better than others. I was lucky enough to start as a public defender in a courtroom where that judge started one of the first DUI drug courts in the state of Georgia. So instead of just saying, well, you are now on your third, fourth, fifth DUI, I'm locking you up for 12 months, and when you get out, we'll just see if you do it again, getting at the root substance abuse issue and the decision making to drink and drive, and trying to treat the issue instead of just locking someone up, fining them, things that weren't really getting to the root of the problem. And so you've seen that approach expand to mental health issues with our mental health court, treatment and accountability court, veterans court. And I think some of those philosophies are now getting into just how we deal with our day-to-day cases. Even if someone isn't a repeat offender that's going into one of those accountability court type programs, I think the judges in general realize that what may have happened in the past, just because something was always done that way doesn't mean it should continue to be done that way if it's proven to not be efficient and effective. I sometimes made this joke to someone a few months ago. I feel like the Leslie Knope of the justice system sometimes, because I do feel like we can do good things, even though that might not always be the public perception. And as a judge, we are sometimes limited in what we can do. I can't just say I don't like this law and not do anything about that law. As a judge, I'm not allowed to do that. A prosecutor can make a decision not to pursue a certain charge, but I can't unilaterally dismiss a case. If the case is presented to me and the state can't meet their burden, then certainly that person's acquitted, they go on their way. And then there are things that I do have discretion in as far as bond, as far as sentencing, that I can make it clear where my priorities are and where they are not. But I don't get to make a decision of, well, I just don't like this law, I'm going to ignore it. But I do think every day the judges, at the very least, and I think certainly the public defenders and many of the prosecutors are working at solutions and trying to come up with approaches that maybe are different than what would have been done 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Okay. So are you an elected judge? I feel like I should know that because I've lived here for a long time and I've been voting these elections, but is this position an elected position?
It is not. It is not. The positions in Athens-Clarke County that are appointed are, I think, juvenile court. The assistant magistrate judges, Judge Barron is an elected official, but her assistants are appointed, and then my position is an appointed position. And so the mayor gets to decide, with the approval of the commission, who becomes the municipal court judge. So Mayor Denson was the one who appointed me when the previous judge stepped down before her term ended. And so I finished out her term, and then Mayor Gertz recently reappointed me. So my position is an appointed position at the discretion of the mayor, approval of the commission.
Okay.
And it's every 2 years.
Do you have just any comment on, some judges are elected, some are appointed, and some people don't, even myself, I don't know who most of the judges are, until recently, I guess, but I don't even know I didn't even know what the solicitor was. I have no idea. I consider myself relatively well informed, but yet we're electing these. Do you think that makes sense, or I don't know. What can we do to fix that situation? Is it do people just need to get more informed, or
And it's a tough thing, because how do you inform yourself? Judges, one of the restrictions we have is the race is a nonpartisan, and so you don't run under any particular party or even as an independent, and that's partially because you want individuals who come before you to feel like you're not beholden to any type of party or philosophy. I don't know how to word it exactly, but everyone needs to be able to get a fair shake when they come in your courtroom and not feel like you might not have their best interests at heart or might not treat them fairly if they come from some opposing philosophy or worldview. And so it can make it very difficult when you have a judicial election because you can't say a whole lot. And you also can't prejudge the matters that would come before you. So even independent of Democrat or Republican, you can't commit yourself to certain things because until a case comes before you and you hear all the facts, you can't say, I'm always going to act in this manner for this particular subject matter. So elections for judges can be difficult. Many times people will inform themselves by speaking to court personnel, sheriffs, public defenders, private attorneys, prosecutors, and get a feel for what a judge likes and does not like. That's a way the public could inform themselves. They could just come to court and watch. We have a Court Watch program that has started in Athens. They've been to my court several times, and getting information from the Court Watch program about judges and what they do could be beneficial. There's some.
How do you join that program? Sorry.
How do you join that program? I think it's through. I know it's the Oconee Street Church, and I'm blanking on the name and I feel bad about it, but Steve Williams is involved. I spoke at a little workshop they had. It was great. A lot of interested citizens, and they were just back in my courtroom about a week ago. So they've been going to different courtrooms, and I think eventually they're hoping to inform the public about some of the things they're seeing, where they think improvements could be made, and that sort of thing. So I think some citizen advocacy like that for people who like you said, didn't even know what a solicitor was, people getting out there, being informed and being willing to inform their fellow citizens, that's a huge benefit for those elected positions. There are jurisdictions that appoint everything, and there are pros and cons to that. Who gets to decide who appoints, and what are they interested in seeing? You have situations like Ferguson, Missouri, where their local traffic court was part of the problems that developed in that community, that they were fining people exorbitantly, and the government, I don't know this for certain, but possibly the local government was appointing a judge who would bring in income for the community, and that could be a concern in an appointed situation. I have never had any concerns about that with our local government. They've never pushed me in any way, shape, or form to make decisions in the courtroom, but that could be the downside to an appointed system. So there's probably no perfect method other than trying to inform yourself as best you can.
Is there anything else that you'd like to say that we didn't get into, or?
No, just that, I do think there is a perception that, maybe not a perception, but that reform hasn't already been ongoing, and it has been. As I stated, DUI drug court started back in 2001. I think Judge Sweat started treatment and accountability court, which is our mental health court, 2006, 2007. Before he even had the funding to do it, he was informally basically just doing it. If he had defendants who came before him and they knew that he was seeing them repeatedly over mental health issues, he just said, you're going to start coming and seeing me once a week, and I'm going to see how you're doing. Without any treatment structure or money to send people to treatment, he was still checking in on them on a regular basis to see if just that regular contact with the judge would help keep them from getting into that cycle. And I think it's only increasing with bail reform and some of the other things we're working on. There's a lot of understanding on the people within the criminal justice system that we can do better, and that we're working on it actively.
Yeah, I know that Governor Deal has made a lot of reforms when he was in office.
Mm-hmm.
I hope this isn't too political a question, but are you optimistic about the chances for that continued reform now that Governor Deal is not in office?
I hope so. The commission that would meet repeatedly in each kind of term had a new subject they were going to attack. One time it was private probation, how to reform private probation, which thankfully we had gotten ahead of the curve and went to county probation well before those reforms even started. One year it was juvenile justice. I mean, every year they had a new topic, and I can't say that they probably attacked all the topics they could. So it would be great for that type of commission to be renewed by the General Assembly, in my opinion, because there are things still left undone. Even though we had some misdemeanor bail reform, it's not perfect, and there's still things we could work on in that area, in my opinion. So luckily, I don't think it's too partisan to say that, because a lot of it was bipartisan. Both sides agreed we can do a lot better, and that's where a lot of these, I mean, you probably had more progress in that area than in a lot of other areas in the state of Georgia, because it didn't matter whether you were a Democrat or Republican. There was some bipartisan push behind a lot of those reforms.
That's true. Well, that's all I have, I guess. Thanks so much for doing this. It was good talking to you.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Sure.